back to another edition of Movies That Move We. Today, we are discussing a classic, Cooley High. Cooley High came out in 1975, and the writer is Eric Monte. Now, this isn't a biographical telling of Eric Monte's life, but he did pull from experiences that he had when he was growing up as a kid in Chicago. The story takes place in Chicago, Cabrini-Green housing projects is where these kids grow up. The focus, not the total focus, the focus is really on these kids going from little boys to adults that transition in the teenage years. But one of the things that it highlights without beating you over the head with it is the social injustice, economic issues. You know, these families were struggling. It talks about friendship, clearly. Um, and it talks about loss and grief, which I'll get to at the end. So the three friends that you see prominently are Preach, played by Glenn Turman, Cochise, played by Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, and Pooter, played by Corin Rogers. These three friends get into everything together. They're chasing girls, they're playing dice, they're smoking weed, they're scamming prostitutes, they're drinking, all kinds of things that teenagers get into even today, which is what still makes this such a relatable film and relevant to the things that are happening today. Excuse me. When I was coming up, um, there was a lot of talk about latchkey kids and how this was horrible, and um, kids shouldn't be left alone and all of this stuff. But when you don't have resources, you got to go out and figure out how you're going to take care of your family. And so what we see is the one parent that we do see in the film is Preach's mother. And you see her briefly because she's working three jobs. So she has enough time to come in, tell her daughter, cook your dinner. When your brother gets home, you guys make sure that you do this, that, and the other, and I'll be back at midnight. Which left the kids a lot of time to get into other stuff. At a certain point, well, let me back up a minute. So these three boys are friends, and early in the film, they start talking about what they're going to do when they graduate from high school. Cochise is star basketball player for the school, so everybody's rooting for him to make it to the NBA because they want to see somebody from Cabrini-Green make it out of the projects, make good money, just be successful. Okay. And even now, that's a mark of success for a lot of young men and women to find their way out of what they think is the worst possible situation that they're in and make it big using their talents as an athlete. Everyone was rooting for Cochise. His friend Preach, he was a poet, and he had dreams of going to Hollywood and becoming a great film writer. His friends knocked him around in the ribs and was like, man, you ain't gonna be no kind of writer. Nobody black is gonna make it like that in Hollywood. And he said, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it. And it was a little simpler for Pooter. Pooter was like, I'm just not gonna work in a factory. I don't want to leave high school and do that the way our parents did. I have to do better than that. They had one teacher who, let me not say they had one teacher, they had more than one teacher that cared, but one teacher who was willing to get involved and make sure that they were a success. That teacher happened to be played by Glenn Morris, and like I said, he was willing to go out of his way to make sure they were success. Of course, they were cutting his class all the time. So we get to the culminating incident in this film. You see them early on, they're running around chasing girls, drinking, smoking, playing dice, all of those things back in the 60s and 70s. That was like, you don't do it, and people kind of turn a blind eye to it to a certain extent today. But we get to the point where these three kids get themselves involved in an incident that lands them in jail. Two of the three land in jail, Preach and Cochise. This teacher, that the history teacher that's played by Garrett Morris, he comes in and he's like, listen, he says to the police, you know me. He goes to his friend on the force. He says, you know me, I'm vouching for them. This one is going to be a great basketball player. That one over there is really smart. Nobody got hurt. Just please let them go. And because of that relationship, the officer let them go. Now, there were two other people who were with them in this incident who didn't get that assistance. And what it resulted in was, when they did finally get out, they went looking for Preach. They blamed him. They were also looking for Cochise, but they really wanted Preach because he's the smart one, so he had to do something to get them out. What ultimately ends up happening, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the film yet, they catch up with Cochise first, and they beat him up, and he ends up dying. Now, in that moment, your heart kind of breaks because, because Cochise was the one who was going to make it. He was going to get out and he was going to go to the NBA and he was going to be a successful basketball player. And just like that, he's gone. Of course, all of his friends were brokenhearted. His friends and family went to the funeral, all except for Preach. And everyone was looking for him because it was like, wait, why isn't his best friend here? But earlier in the film, there's a scene where he's trying to tell his mother, and this is after he was released from jail. He's trying to tell his mom, I don't think I need to be here anymore. I'm too much of a burden to you. School's not working for me anymore. I think I need to strike out on my own. By this time, he's 18 years old, so technically, by law, he could. But his mom was going from one job to the next. She was exhausted. She laid down, went to sleep, and he didn't get a chance to have that conversation with her. So when his best friend passes away, he decides, this isn't anything to discuss. I got to do what I got to do. And he was standing in the background watching the funeral. And after all of the cars left, he paid respects to his best friend. And then he left. He didn't look back. Now, in the end, you find out he did become a great film writer. And Pooter became a family man. And so, it comes full circle. You see them go, even though you don't see when they become men, you see them go from boys and you know that they made it as men. And we can go over the statistics of how many Black men don't live to see their 20s. But that's kind of what makes this a bit poignant because, A film like this, you usually expect to hear the worst or see the absolute worst. And we've seen that in more modern films where there isn't a nice, neat bow on the end of the story. But this did a great job of taking some of these serious topics, layering humor, weaving humor in between it, but still bringing home the point that, these are kids who grew up in hard times. And even if they didn't make it out of that immediate community, they made something of themselves. Um, Overall, I'm going to give this movie a 10 out of 5. Don't worry about the math. It's a 10 out of 5. Um, and part of the reason it's a classic, a lot of these themes still hold true today. We can all find something in it that we can relate to. I guarantee you, if you sit down and you watch this movie, you'll be able to go, oh, I know so and so. They may not have been playing dice, but they were doing something else that they ought not have been doing. And you can run down the whole list of your high school or even middle school years. But it's still so relatable about that transitional period in the teenage years. So I definitely recommend it. For those of you who are of age or who were young kids when this came out, 50s, 60s, 70s kids, sit down and watch it with your kids and grandkids. Let them watch it without you, and just have that casual conversation about, oh yeah, I remember telephones. The reason why I make this movement and you guys make this movement when pretending to talk on the telephone is because we didn't have cell phones back in the day. You can have that whole conversation about some of the little things that they see in the film then that we don't do now, but how in spite of that, there are still similarities between then and now. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. Comment, talk to me, tell me what you liked about this movie or what you didn't like about the movie. Talk to me about the parts that you found to be relatable, things that you notice now that maybe you didn't notice the first time. Let's talk about it. Leave some comments down below. And until next time, before I go, make sure you like, share, and follow this page, okay? Send your friends over here. I need more people to talk to. You can find us on YouTube at Media That Moves We, and look for the Movies That Move We playlist. You'll see everything that we've done over the last 2 years, or just about everything that we've done over the last 2 years. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Movies That Move We on Facebook. Join the page, join the conversation again, send friends, subscribe, and enjoy all of the movie facts and things that we share over there. So anyway, until next time, thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week with another great Black film to discuss. Bye-bye.